tear the shit out of this place.
Sofia I and Elena of Avalor are why I love unbridled creative expression. Both series were created with a palpable sense of passion for their world and characters. The creators had a vision, taking what really only needed to be little snacks of shows, so to speak, and elevating them to hearty meals that I can't get enough of. It's not like with a lot of other shows where you feel like you have to tell people that they need to wait for it to find its footing to get through the first season or two, or even the first couple episodes before it really gets good. No, both Sofia and Elena come swinging hard right out the gate. I started with Sofia after finishing the Tangled series, because most of the Disney princesses who I wish had more stories around them don't have their own series. I hadn't expected Sofia to be anywhere near as epic and engaging as Tangled was, but boy was I proven wrong. I actually like Sofia and Elena more than the Tangled series. I don't want to try to make these series look better by comparing them to other shows, so I won't dwell on this for too long, but to me, they had much stronger visions and themes, and I wasn't disappointed in as many story and character choices with them, like I was with Tangled, as much as I loved that show as well. But Sofia and Elena are more than solid enough to praise them for their own merits, and they deserve to be analyzed for their strengths without having to put anything else down. One thing I will say though is that I built up certain expectations over the course of experiencing a story based on my personal tastes and things I like to see explored in narratives, and a lot of times I come out of these stories, even ones I really like, feeling like they held back too much on certain things that would have made them stronger, or just feeling disappointed in decisions they made. But for the most part, I didn't feel that way with Sofia and Elena. I finished both series feeling absolutely floored at how satisfied I was with them. They played to their strengths so well from beginning to end, and while they did have their flaws, every story does, I got the sense that the creators were very proud of what they had, and wanted to make the best possible shows they could. In my opinion, they succeeded at that, and then some. Let's break down the animation, as it'll likely be the thing that'll make getting into Sofia I challenging for new viewers. I know it was for me. I have no real experience in animation myself. I only know from intuition when something looks good or bad. The first season of Sofia, as I said before, does look pretty rough. Frankly, the entire series lacks that sort of cinematic polish you would see in higher budget shows or movies, but I'm impressed by just how much the creators were able to push their budget and technology to their limits, even in those earlier episodes. The art direction and dynamic poses convey much more character than you would expect, and push through those rough visuals. In just the second episode, during Amber's masterpiece, that is
Our Perfect Slumber Party,
there's such fun choreography going on, like with the trio sitting Sofia down to get her to listen, and Sofia just waiting her turn like, yeah, finish your silly line so I can tell you why I'm right. And how Cleo is becoming less convinced by Amber's perspective over the course of the song, setting up for later when she's the first one to start seeing Sofia's point of view. From the very beginning, this series is surprisingly subtle. Not everything is directly told to the audience. Sometimes they trust us to figure out what a simple glance means, which is rare in a lot of modern children's animation. Even the first season has impressive animation techniques, like with the hair and clothing physics, and the weight and gravity with which the characters move. Both Sofia and Elena have very effective facial and bodily expressions that convey so much emotion through obvious ways and through subtlety as well. Through the animation, the artists held no bars expressing all kinds of authentic feelings through this world and its characters. I love the amount of depth they give to Esteban, simply through his flamboyant gestures and his sad puppy dog eyes. Despite the bad things he does throughout the series, it doesn't feel the need to explain to you that he isn't a purely evil man. He's a heartbroken soul who's lost not only the lives of some of his familia, but their love and respect as well. He's animated in such a way that the complexity and nature of his character speak for themselves through visuals alone. This extends to the rest of the cast from both shows. Each character is brought to life with mastery of the visual medium, even with the limitations. This is just one of the many reasons why the cast feels so rich and dynamic. The character designs play a huge part in this as well. I don't know the science behind what makes for good designs. All I know is that many of the characters have certain details that surface their characterization greatly. I had a lot of fun looking at the clothes of the characters across both series, especially the princes and princesses, and wondering what their homes look like. Elena usually dresses in all red and flexible clothes, and has bright red blush on her cheeks that all come together to make her look very lively and agile. Her sister Isabel wears soft light blue colors and, despite her status as a royal, more simple but practical clothes that wouldn't get in the way of her inventing, not to mention her messy hair that gets across that focused inventor vibe. Cedric has a lot of sharp features with his nose and hair, and wears dark robes that, together, should paint the image of a bad guy, but his big soft ears and cheeks, and that bow he wears, really make him look harmless. In the times where he embraces his good side, those softer features start to make sense. I believe this was a deliberate design choice that informs you of his true nature, and not just because the designers didn't want to have a villain who is too scary looking, because we do see much more sinister designs in the same show. Aunt Tilly is full of whimsy and an unorthodox person, but confident and capable, all of which are reflected in her design. I appreciate how uppity Doña Paloma looks by design, with her fox-like, pointy, and tilted eyes. I remember thinking while watching the show that they would really have to bend her design to make her look like anything other than a stuck-up bitch tornado, but when she has moments where she chooses humility and kindness, I don't know how they did it, but they actually made her look nice and soft in those moments. The creators did a wonderful job of avoiding same-face syndrome. They didn't just slap hairstyles onto the same model, change the sizes of the heads for different ages, and called it a day. They went so far as to model different chins, lip shapes, cheeks, eyelids, ears. No one character looks the same across these shows, except for some copy-pasted background characters, but that happens in any show. To be fair, this is probably only something I look out for as a fan of anime, which can be much more prone to same-face syndrome. I was blown away by the environmental design in these shows. The Mystic Isles from Sofia is nothing short of fantastical. The creatures and environments there are so inspired, and I love the way colors are used. The same goes for the striking Viastrea and Spirit World in Elena. The various locations across the Everrealm in both series are great too. Avalor itself is probably my favorite location out of all of them. The palace has a wonderfully memorable design, and the town feels surprisingly functional and lived in for a TV show, which not all animated series can boast about. A lot of shows have locations that feel like ghost towns. The town of Dunwich in Enchantia could feel pretty barren in some episodes, and the castles in both shows did seem empty at times, as cool as the buildings themselves were, but it never got so bad that it was distracting, and there were many times where these locations were filled with background characters. Speaking of the world, I can't believe not only how deep the lore is for these shows, but also how consistent they seem to be. You gotta appreciate the respect the creators have for the very young target audience, to be giving them a story that has so many moving parts and history for them to get into. That's the kind of stuff that kids need to get their inspiration going. They need thought-provoking and rich worlds teeming with history and life. I know when I was younger, I was most invested in fictional worlds that had thought put into their immersion and functionality, and I didn't even know what functionality meant back then. It was the confidence the creators had for showing their work for what it is that tapped into my imagination. I wish I would have watched these shows as they were airing. I would have been in my early teens at the time Sofia the First began, but I was a huge fan of Tangled back then, so if I knew how deep Sofia was, I probably would have been super into it. I just didn't think much of it because of the rough visuals and the fact that it was on Disney Junior. As far as I'm aware, there aren't any glaring oversights in characterization or plot points. Both shows are amazing at remembering little quirks or interactions from characters, even those who haven't shown up in a while, like Donya and Julio's ongoing back and forth gag where they call each other,
I'd really like you to...
Take over as Magister?
Be my assistant?
Assistant Magister?
Assistant to the Magister.
Assistant to the Magister, hmm?
I just assumed I'd plan the feast since I am the Assistant Magister.
Assistant to the Magister?
And Doña Paloma has officially been named Coronation Party Planner.
And I will help as your assistant party planner.
Assistant to the party planner? I'm going to need my assistant party planner.
You mean assistant to the party planner?
I mean assistant party planner.
I appreciate other consistencies, such as Elena being known for making bad jokes,
Why did the cookie go to the doctor?
Because he felt crummy.
and that, among her squad, Mateo's the only one who thinks her jokes are funny. It's not something that's overemphasized, it's rarely ever outright said, and you really have to look out for it to realize it's a thing. It's just a fun detail. In general, both series are fantastic at not retconning things, forgetting details, or having plot holes, as far as I can tell anyway. I'm sure there are some, but I haven't noticed them. If anything, I was blown away at how self-referential they were, with events from past episodes, even ones that happened a long time ago. It gave me the sense that the writers remembered every little detail like they were yesterday. That, or they kept a biblical amount of notes. In regards to the Disney princess cameos in Sofia the First, I just think they're fine. They contribute good lessons to the episodes they're in. The princesses themselves don't really feel like the same fleshed out characters as from their own films. They're more like flat caricatures. There's nothing wrong with that really, they are just cameos after all, but I never got particularly excited when any of them showed up, even Rapunzel, because I knew they wouldn't have much to offer except for great songs and lessons. Frankly, the princess cameos are one of the least interesting parts of the show for me, and I rarely even think about them until I'm reminded. If they never appeared at all, I don't think the series would lose much value, except in maybe getting Disney princess fans to watch the show that it couldn't have achieved with more original characters, which I think is where the writing really shines. As for the lack of crossover once Elena's series began, I believe it was perfectly fine doing its own thing. As much as I would have loved for characters from Sofia to appear in it more, the cast and setting of Elena is honestly strong enough that it wasn't necessary. It was disappointing to me how in the pilot, Sofia wasn't mentioned at all, and seldom throughout the rest of the series. I get that they wanted to streamline things, so you could enjoy Elena on its own, but I feel like some crossover here and there wouldn't have hurt. I've seen people online asking which series to start first, or if they can just skip Sofia. God knows why anyone would want to do that. But for those who just want to jump right into Elena, there is the positive that you don't need prior knowledge of the previous show to get into it. It goes to show just how much confidence the creators had for Elena, that the series could stand on its own without any help. While I don't entirely agree with the decision, they weren't wrong. I'm not going to do any huge deep dives into any one character, because a lot of them deserve their own dedicated videos. But for now, let's talk about the girl from the village who was doing alright, then became a princess overnight. The way I feel about Sofia as a character pretty much applies to how I feel about her series as a whole. I was surprised at just how solid her personality is. I didn't know about the hour-long pilot episode at first, so my initial impression of the character and the series was the first episode, Just One of the Princes. Right off the bat, here's a character who's taking charge, pursuing the things she wants, and defying societal and gender norms because she really wants to compete in a flying derby race, meant exclusively for princes. Sofia immediately defines herself as a standout of a protagonist. Minimus, Hugo, Amber, and James play their parts well in this episode, but Sofia is by far the most interesting one here. She reminds me of that quote from Al the Boy's Soul of Sonic Stories video essay.
He is the inciting incident. The plot doesn't happen to him, he happens to it.
That sounds like Sofia to me. I'm not comparing her directly to Sonic though. I'm actually bending Al's quote a bit for my own point. In many of his stories, Sonic is an unchanging force of nature who has the themes of the story pumping through his veins and who incites change in others. That last part is what he and Sofia have in common. They're not both unchanging, but their very existence, their drive to do what they do, is an inciting incident in itself. Where others jump to the conclusion of calling her a Mary Sue, someone who is often helping characters find the exact things they need because she's already perfect, I see an active protagonist. Calling her a Mary Sue is just ignoring the series for what it is, and I have seen some people call her that. It is true that, in some episodes, she knows exactly what someone needs to do to conquer their fears and overcome obstacles, but she too needs help, and needs to work hard to get what she wants, and has to make mistakes to realize what she needs. As her mother, Queen Miranda, told her, Sofia has a passion for wanting to see the good in everyone. She's very inquisitive about others, and has a knack for being able to analyze someone's situation from an outsider's perspective, and can see exactly where their troubles come from and how to address them. She isn't always on the mark. She's prone to making mistakes and misjudging people and situations, but that's exactly why she has far more depth than I ever would have expected. Sofia very easily could have either been a helpless ditz who constantly needs help and forgets her lessons episode to episode just so the writers can have an easy character to work off of, or she could have been a flawless catalyst for giving lessons directly to the viewers without ever needing to learn a thing herself. The creators took their time to make a character who is intelligent but has plenty of flaws to make her feel like a rounded character. The fact that she has elements of flat characters who never really need to learn anything because they are catalysts for change themselves, and yet still has to learn much herself, is why she feels so rounded. I'm not trying to put flat characters down to say that Sofia is better than them. What I am saying is that she takes some of the best traits of that archetype and uses them to become a captivating character in her own right. I like to believe that her actions and the lessons she's learned and have taught have inspired children to put themselves out there, to learn things and incite change in others, to make themselves and this world as much of a better place as they can. I'm not even sure if that's true, but I like to believe it is. Let me know how this series has impacted you. For being one of the faces of what I always saw as a squeaky clean, inoffensive network, she's surprisingly sassy and snarky.
Let's take my broom to Jade's. No thanks. Come on, it'll be fun. It wasn't so fun last time. The preconceived notion of this character that I had for so many years just from seeing her in promotional material couldn't have been any farther off the mark. I always figured she'd either be a helpless kid who couldn't do a thing on her own, or have an unbreakable positivity all the time. But what's funny is she tries so hard to put up with people's shit, yet there's moments where you can tell she's about to snap. She is an extremely positive person, but what makes that part of her so believable is that even she has her limits with people. Sometimes, Sofia decides that she's done all she can for someone, and needs to let them decide if they want to put in the effort to learn from their mistakes and change. Sofia inherited her mother's fearlessness, not in the boring way of not ever being afraid of anything, but as she herself said, true courage is being afraid, but acting anyway. It's interesting how she has a love for adventure and danger, but she doesn't completely dismiss the princess life she's fortunate to have either. You'd expect her to have disdain for that aspect of her life, because it's such a polar opposite to the more exciting stuff she does. That certainly could be an interesting character in its own right, but Sofia actually appreciates all parts of her life. While she does take things for granted sometimes, those episodes actually deepen her characterization. Sofia is a fantastic role model not just for children, but for adults as well. Elena of Avalor was a series originally developed for the Disney Channel, before later being moved back to Disney Junior, and yet, the slightly more mature tone wasn't stunted by this change in networks. From the start, the series had a slightly older audience in mind, which is probably why they originally intended for it to be on the Disney Channel. But even in Elena's debut in the Sofia the First special, Elena in the Secret of Avalor, they didn't shy away from the heavier themes that come with that character. I read about parents who said they stopped letting their kids watch when the special came out because it was too scary. It's peculiar that they allowed blatant topics of death and tyranny to be featured in a Disney Junior series, but I respect whoever made these decisions, because not only does it have that Star Wars Andor Trojan horse effect, being a piece of socially critical art funded by an evil company, but it allowed for the existence of one of my favorite characters in this universe, Elena herself. Despite the amount of praise I gave for Sofia earlier, I actually like Elena even more. What the two princesses have in common is that they act as vectors of change for the people they interact with, while also having much to learn themselves. Although she was trapped in the amulet for over 40 years and guided Sofia throughout her own journey, Elena is still very prone to making mistakes due to her impulsive nature. It was probably because she was trapped that she had so much to figure out. She felt she needed to rush to make up for lost time. Upon her awakening, Elena was thrust into the role of crown princess, with a grand council who had to vote on her every decision. Her mental age led her to believe she was more than ready to rule by herself. But throughout the series, she had to be reminded time and again that there is always something more to learn, and the role of queen was one that had to be earned through much more experience than she realized. The final song of the series, Guiding Light, is about how her people, her family, and friends respect her as a fully capable leader, and how Elena herself admits she never could have done it alone. A good leader is one who is open to receiving assistance and guidance from the ones they are responsible for. They are not to be obeyed as all-knowing gods. There should be mutual support between a leader and their people. Elena wasn't driven by pure passion to lead or from a need for control, but rather, she felt she owed it to her late parents to be the best ruler she could be. She needed to make them proud and live up to the standard of her father, King Raoul. Like her father, she always meant well and led with compassion, but she was often so controlled by her desires that she could become narrow-minded and make rash decisions. Elena felt she needed to become capable all on her own because she singled out her father out of her admiration for him, thinking he was such a great ruler because he was so capable as an individual that he didn't need help. But even he admitted that he hadn't always listened to others. Ignoring Esteban's warnings about Shiriki had cost him his life. We're still talking about a Disney Junior show, by the way. It wasn't that Elena didn't understand that she was stronger with help. She even taught this lesson to others, but in the most desperate of times, she always put so much pressure on herself. Shiriki killing her parents left a wound on her heart that would flare up when Shiriki or similar threats presented themselves. By putting herself on the front lines, Elena wanted to keep anyone else from being hurt. Trauma can lead people to make decisions that are against their better judgment. It can make us forget our values because fear has as much power over us as we give it. Of course, someone as young as Elena shouldn't necessarily be blamed for responding to her trauma in the ways she did. She is technically over 50 years old, but that time in the amulet hardly gave her opportunities to grow, so she's basically still only 16 at the start of the series. In our efforts to be like the ones we look up to, we end up losing ourselves along the way. We ignore our own strengths and weaknesses because we imagine ourselves like someone else. We imagine that we have the same success, the same charisma, the same love and admiration from others, and we might take for granted the things and love we've been blessed with ourselves. I would be remiss not to mention the amazing musical aspect of this series. The music of Sofia I has a slightly lower bar of quality for me compared to Elena, but that isn't to say I don't love the music of Sofia. Far from it. Here are a few of my favorites.
It's Baileywick, the man at the castle does everything without any hustle. It's super quick, you can always count on Baileywick.
If you know what's good for you now, it's nothing to discuss. So take your final bow, 'cause this island belongs to us. Yeah, take your final bow, 'cause this island belongs to us. So just pick up a wand and get it twirling, and I'll teach you how to make magic like Merlin.
Yes, please, please teach us how to make magic like Merlin. Come on, Sophia, all you got to do is choose. Just pick a school, it's easy to do. Go on, Sophia, really, you've got nothing to lose. We all just want to know what you're gonna do. Yes, we really want to know.
And that's just my short list. Part of what makes these shows so charming and comforting for me is the music. Long after having finished watching them, I still come back to the music, and it quickly reminds me why I love these stories so much. I know nothing about what goes into making music, but I can say that there's a wide variety of uplifting, comedic, and emotional songs in these shows that are very memorable, thanks in no small part to their catchiness.
No, it's you who will see when I'm through. One day you'll be ready. I am already ready. You almost are ready. I'll show you. I'm ready, so ready to move. For this is what we do to celebrate Navidad. And you will love it too, the way we do Navidad. Schedule dress to impress. The only way to achieve success is to get them to sign on the dotted line, and then we could have a jolly old time. Forming a friendship is best for our guests. Fun and frolic is what I suggest. Filling the room with laughter and jest. Treat them like family right from the start. To win their trade, we first must win their heart.
You are growing and you're glowing. Your potential's finally showing. You will shine. You'll have it all. You'll be the bright light of the ball.
At last we are together, as grand as any treasure. I'll find no one who's ever Amelia forever. You'll find in each endeavor, through dark and stormy weather. There's no doubt whatsoever, Amelia forever.
When editing the script for this video, I was listening to Home for Good for the bajillionth time, and I read the comments for that song in particular, which pointed out some touching details that I never noticed. Quote, both of Naomi's songs are I Want songs, which are sung by every Disney princess. Elena's songs, on the other hand, are I Am and I Will. This makes Elena unique for me. Naomi brings the familiarity of a typical Disney princess, while Elena is her own type of princess. End quote. Quote, about her mother coming back home, who else thinks that those words have a double meaning to Elena as she sings them? The way I see it, if on one side, Elena is harmonizing with her friend to cheer her up, on the other, she's very melancholic because unlike Naomi's, her mother is never coming back. End quote. The songs have important lessons within them, not just to show positive outlooks and to teach, but also to allow characters in negative mindsets to express themselves just as much as those who are in the right.
Bigger is better, and biggest is best. If you take my advice, you'll outshine the rest. In Paraiso, the sun is shining a little brighter than Avalor, and every cloud has a silver lining. So much like here, but a little bit more.
Having a catchy song to go along with something that should be avoided or unlearned makes it easier to remember the lesson. Let me know your favorite songs from these shows in the comments. I have a lot of respect for the writers for not forcing any of the main cast into romantic relationships or love triangles. Maybe they would have done these things, but the studio just didn't let them. The romantic relationships we do get in these series are so natural and believable that, whilst writing this section, I'd actually forgotten about many of them at first. Not because they're forgettable or anything, but because they're so unobtrusive to the characters and story that they just work and I simply accept them. There's tons of storytelling potential in romance. It has and can be done wonderfully, but it was nice to see the main cast of these shows just be friends and to stay that way. They did of course have drama with each other, because that's a huge part of why their dynamics are so engaging, and we do get some relationships, like with Gabe and Naomi, which I will admit was pretty undercooked. Maybe it's disappointing that we never saw more with that ship, but I'll honestly take that over a generic subplot of Elena's squad fighting over each other and just going through stuff we've seen countless times before. Situations that have ruined dynamics in other shows. There is an episode where Gabe and Mateo are fighting over Elena, but it's only because Armando sent out a letter to all of her friends saying,
Princess Elena would like her best friend to join her for a day of sailing on the new royal sailboat.
I'm Elena's best friend?
I'm Elena's best friend?
There's a new royal sailboat?
It is implied that they have feelings for Elena, but it never hijacks the story. By not forcing in romance, it felt like we were allowed to explore other aspects of these characters with a greater sense of focus and clarity, because we weren't wasting time on some notion that we always need to mark romantic drama off the checklist for shows. I will say though, as much as I enjoyed Armando's romantic episode with Marlena, it's a shame that this ship never set sail. Earlier, I said I wouldn't compare these shows to others, but I just had to get that off my chest because it was so refreshing to not have to sit through forced romantic drama for once. I think that speaks to how much I respect the sheer confidence these series have in themselves. Other than the unremarkable princess cameos in Sofia, which really weren't all that distracting in the first place, these shows know what they're about from the start, and they just roll with it unabashedly. I came out of both of these shows feeling like everything was planned out from the very start. No weird retcons, lazy fan service, or studio interference. If any of those things are in these shows, I don't see them, but please point out any issues you notice in the comments. I went through a very hard time a few years ago when I came down with a chronic illness that basically ruined my life. In my darkest moments during that, I turned to things from my childhood and stories made for very young children as a means of escape. Stories such as these helped me to heal from the mindset of only allowing myself to be invested in what quote-unquote isn't embarrassing for adults to like. There was something oddly taboo feeling about letting myself enjoy these sorts of stories, but now I've grown out of that feeling. And when I throw on an episode of Sofia the First, I don't feel guilty for watching something that might not necessarily have been made for me. But I believe stories that were targeted for certain demographics can be enjoyed by anyone. I could justify my enjoyment of them to be, well, I'm a writer, and this is the sort of stuff I want to write, which is sort of true, but honestly, I just like watching them for the sake of it. I found that I don't need to justify why I enjoy something. I don't need to worry about what others think about my interests, because all that matters is how the things I love make me feel. But I also have a passion for analyzing my favorite stories, and I discovered that even the ones made for little kids have depth to them. There's so much to talk about with Sofia and Elena that will make for many videos to come, and I'm incredibly grateful to the creators of these series for having a huge positive impact on my mental health and in broadening my horizons. These shows remind me of and have taught me important core values. I'm always happy to return to them now and again, and to share my enjoyment with you. Sofia and Elena were actually some of my biggest inspirations for my own free web series, Gal the Ghost Princess, which you can actually listen to as an audiobook here on my channel. Don't let the Disney Junior logo fool you. These kids shows are made by real, mature adults who know what it means to analyze oneself, to overcome our fears, our doubts, and temptations. I encourage you to share your thoughts on these shows in the comments, and if you haven't seen them yet, I highly recommend you watch Sofia the First and Elena of Avalor, my favorite Disney princesses.
What an adorable little ditty!